been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Bupp has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Bupp.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is president and founder of the Barrington Group, Larry Lieberman. Now, for more than 40 years, the Barrington Group's company philosophy has been to provide excellent quality maintenance service, good, clean, well-manicured grounds, well-prepared apartments, friendly, courteous professional staff members, and a genuine, real concern for health, safety, and the well-being of their residents. Now, the Barrington Group believes in long-term ownership. They do not build and sell or flip their properties. In fact, they still own and manage most of their original portfolio. And I took a little excerpt from their website, which I think will help provide some additional context to the type of company that Barrington is. And so here we go. We know our residents. They know us. We strive to have the same staff at a property year after year. Our residents are not subject to new management with changing rules and less quality standards. Because we are long-term owners, we must pay attention to keeping our properties in excellent physical condition. Now, to prevent them from aging, we spend considerable resources on keeping our properties beautiful. And so I think that guys give you a little bit of a roundabout idea of the type of group that Barrington is. So I'm excited to introduce Larry to the show here. But before we dive into it with him, I just have a few quick housekeeping items to run through. First one here, as I've mentioned in the last couple of shows, our third mobile home park investment fund just went live a few weeks ago. And we've got a healthy pipeline of off-market deals cooking. So if you guys have an interest, you want to learn more about partnering with our team that has a proven track record of a little more than a decade with case studies to back it up, you can go to our website, investwithsunrise.com. Again, that's investwithsunrise.com. And there on that site, you can watch our most recent webinar that goes through this third fund or investment offering. And you can also access our PPM and offering docs. And if you guys aren't familiar with the mobile home park investment space, I suggest to do yourself a favor and watch that webinar. And I think what you'll quickly realize is why some of the largest private equity groups such as Blackstone, Carlyle Group, and Apollo, just name a few, are heavily betting on the mobile home park sector. Again, that's investwithsunrise.com to learn more. Moving on here, if you love what we're doing at the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, I encourage you to subscribe to the show. That way you'll get notified when new episodes come out. And then also, if you feel like we add value to you and your business and you haven't done so already, please go leave a rating and review. It's how we attract amazing guests such as Larry here to the show. And then lastly, guys, I want to remind you of the 30-minute call I offer each and every Friday. I've been doing this now for over 6 years. This is where I set aside 2 to 3 30-minute time slots every Friday, every week, pretty much 52 weeks out of the year, to where you and I can connect. So if you're a listener of the show, and whether you're just getting started in the real estate or maybe you're a seasoned pro, you're a veteran, either way, if you'd like to jump on the horn and discuss anything and everything related to real estate investing, I love to meet you, would love to chat. I've made a lot of awesome connections over the years. I've talked to hundreds of you since I've been doing these calls. And so if you want to schedule that with me, you can go to kevinbupp.com. And I will tell you that there's no ulterior motive here. I'm not going to try to sell you anything or pitch you on a coaching or mentorship program. This is really just a way for me to connect with others that share a similar passion for real estate investing. So again, kevinbupp.com to schedule that call with me. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest here for today's show, Larry Lieberman. Larry, how you doing today?
Fine, Kevin. Thank you for having me on the show. Looks like an exciting time.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you here. And as we found out when we just started in the beginning, we were chatting a little bit. Larry's pretty close to me. He's down in Sarasota, so he's only about an hour south of where I'm based out of up in Clearwater. So we're both enjoying some beautiful Florida winter weather, which winter down here just means that the humidity kind of went away and that we've got some sunny skies and that you don't sweat immediately when you walk outside. So it's a beautiful time of the year.
When was the last time you wore a long sleeve shirt?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually wear them quite often. My wife makes fun of me because I even wear them when it's hot outside. I don't know why it is, but I'm wearing jeans right now, and I don't have a long sleeve on, but I'm one of those goofy guys that even in the summertime, Larry, I end up wearing long sleeve shirts. I don't know what it is, but in any event, excited to have you here and excited to learn more about just your background. You've been doing this now for more than 4 decades, in the apartment space. Actually, way more than that. I think it's like 6 decades. Correct me if I'm wrong. Barrington's been around for over 4 decades, but you've been in the apartment space since the 60s, and so just a extensive experience as a real estate investor. You've been through many different market cycles, and so I think that we're going to be able to pull back the curtains a little bit and uncover a lot of great information here. So I'm very excited. And how I normally like to start these shows, Larry, is maybe I'll just pass the mic back to you for a few minutes and give you some time to tell us a bit about your background. Really, maybe from the start of it, how you found your way into real estate, right? Like, what did that story look like? How you stumbled upon real estate, and then we'll talk about maybe some of the earlier days, and then bring us up to speed where we're at today.
Okay. Kevin, I think it's important for what you said to understand underlying all of this is the word cycles. There are cycles. There are ups and downs in every industry, and the real estate industry, specifically the multifamily industry, is no different. And so it is those cycles that creates opportunities. So in the 60s, for those people who don't know what it was like, apartments were vastly different. Apartments were places that you lived because you had to, not because you wanted to. They were pretty austere. Furnished apartments were rare, at least in the Midwest where I grew up. You lived in an apartment because you were newly married, you didn't have a lot of money, or you were divorced and didn't have a lot of money. And so you lived in an apartment until you could buy a home. And so apartments were pretty much mundane. And owners of apartments pretty much ran their properties as individual businesses. We didn't have large funds buying properties so much. Properties were smaller in nature, did not have the amenity packages that we have today. And the apartment industry was just really owning bricks and sticks and managing them. Mm-hmm. And so that was where I entered the business with my father, who started buying HUD foreclosed properties at auction and then working real hard to turn them around, which included management practices, fixing things, taking care of the people, making the residents happy, keeping residents, the kinds of things that we do today, but we didn't have all the fluff that we did today. Then we hit the 70s, and I saw that the world was different. We were starting to build lifestyle apartments. What's that? Well, that's swimming pools and shag carpet and designer kitchens. And oh my God, the old folks said, you can't make any money doing that. So the problem was that new idea of lifestyle apartments, T111 siding, come on, green appliances, garbage disposals yet? Central air conditioning? Come on. So we started building those properties. And just as fast as we started building them, typical of our industry, we will always overbuild everything until we drive the market right into the toilet. And in 1974, in 75, that's exactly what happened. Everybody was building lifestyle apartments, and there was not enough people to fill them. And so we reached, the country was in recession and developers were going broke left and right. I went to my very first National Apartment Association meeting in 1974. And the introductory speaker said, "Congratulations to those of you who are here for still being here." That was my first tip-off that things were not good in the industry. And they weren't. And so banks, those were the primary funders of properties. We didn't have a lot of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac back then. It was mostly banks and savings and loans. They were struggling with defaulted loans. And so property management really wasn't a big deal back then. It wasn't really recognized as an art, as a business. But we did because we already had thousands of units and we knew how to manage them. And I went to a couple banks and I said, look, you got some distressed properties. We can run them for you, get them back up and running and make money. But if we do, I want to buy them. And we want to set a price now. So we did that. And we got to work. The market got better. Probably no thanks to us, but we managed the properties better. And those lifestyle properties ended up being what we ended up developing and building through the 70s on into the 80s. And lifestyle apartments became, at least outside of the big cities like New York and Chicago, the Midwest and other cities that were developing, Houston, Dallas, lifestyle apartments was the bigger pools, tennis courts, racquetball courts, things that we never heard of back in the 60s. So cycles, always cycles. The apartment industry got really good in the 80s, and all of those lifestyle apartments filled up. And those properties that we had bought back in the late 70s did very well through the 80s. But again, in 87, the tax law changed. So those investors who we had garnered to invest in tax credits as their method of return on their investment, because their investment was tax-free, I think your listeners probably understand why that was. That was the accelerated depreciation years. Mm-hmm. It ended midnight 1987 into 1988. So the market crashed. Companies that had been buying apartment complexes left and right and been buying them based upon not on cash flow, but on return to the investor based on tax. It was a phony investment. And they crashed because they couldn't keep up the demand for the cash flow. Well, there we were, again, buying distressed property. Some of them were so severely distressed that in 1990, we started buying vacant and boarded up properties.
Wow.
Abandoned by their owner because they didn't want them. There was an issue with the Congress at the time and in terms of lenders, in terms of liability for contamination. And many lenders were happy not even to foreclose on the property because they did not want to be in the chain of title in case there had been contamination, but let them just sit and rot. So as you saw in my bio, there's a gentleman in Atlanta that had been in the construction business of building new apartments. That had slowed down a great deal. And so we started buying vacant, boarded up properties, literally boarded up, and turning them into brand new properties. So again, cycles.
Yeah, very interesting. There's a lot to unpack there. A couple of the questions that come to mind during that last cycle, prior to 1987, the change of the tax laws that occurred in 1987. How did you keep yourselves from being enticed? What were the fundamentals that your investment group followed that many others were not following? I mean, obviously the prices became inflated to the point to where the deal didn't really make sense from a cash flow standpoint. It was more of just the depreciation benefits that people were buying for. However, you didn't sound like you fell into that trap while many others did. How'd you guys refrain yourself?
Kevin, it was very enticing. There were companies out buying and building everything in sight. And we couldn't compete because we wanted cash flow, absent of the tax benefits. And so we weren't players. We weren't out building and developing and buying because we couldn't compete with the tax credit mentality. Why? Because we were long-term, and still are, long-term owners. We're going to keep our properties for a while. So someday, if the tax law changes, we would not be able to supply our investors with the return that they wanted. And that's exactly what happened. So we are cash flow only buyers. We're not looking at the tax benefits. We're looking at running a business. Apartments are a business. So we stayed away from it. And it was tough. It was very tough. Everybody was doing everything, and we're sitting there not doing anything.
Do you see any similarities to that time to where we're at today? Obviously, there's some, still incredible tax benefits associated with, with real estate, at least at present time. There's a good chance those, lots of things will be changed with this potentially new administration. But are there any similarities as far as buying activity, folks overpaying that you can relate to today versus back in the 70s there? Or I'm sorry, not in the 70s, but in the 80s.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. At least I do, but mine ran out of batteries. Today, cap rates are the lowest they've ever been. And so is obviously interest rates. What are we going to do when we buy properties today when the cap rates are so low that we're paying high prices for apartment communities? Ridiculously high prices for apartment units. What's going to happen then when interest rates, if they do, and they will, cycles, go back up again? Those returns that we're giving to our people, not mine, but the funds, the investors, those returns are going to get pretty puny compared to what people could get by building or buying new then. So if our cap rates keep declining, then I think we're building in a problem. Secondly, we are overbuilding the market. Again, as we have year after every 15 years, we go through this. It's like a tornado coming through. You sit there long enough, you're going to get blown away. So if we don't stop this overbuilding, and why are we overbuilding? Us apartment developers only build when people will give us money, either banks or people. We don't use our own money. Well, we do, but not everybody does. I give you enough money, you'll go build apartments. Trust me, right? Well, that's what happens. There's so much money chasing the apartment industry today that they're building for such little return. Well, that's great. Well, what happens when alternate investments come up, or we have a huge recession and people move out of those apartments because they can't afford the high rent that they projected and performed would make them get a 2% return? So we will go through another cycle, and guys like me will come up out of the woodwork and will buy. And that's what we wait for.
Fantastic. I want to back up a little bit as well. When you were back in the HUD days, when you were buying the distressed HUD assets, there was a question I wanted to ask before we got far ahead, and I forgot, but now I remembered. So there was a comment I read on your website as I was going through the timeline of your business of Barrington. Back in the 60s, you acquired somewhere in the range of 2,000 assets, apartment assets that were mostly derived from distressed HUD deals. And the comment went to say that the time burden required to manage that many units kept you from spending time in your other business interests, and so you divested of those interests. And so I guess then you started buying again, right? You guys acquired accumulated quite a large portfolio thereafter, and have since had a fairly substantial portfolio. Were there some major changes in your property management style back when you started with those 2,000 assets and divested that allowed you to maybe more efficiently manage your business thereafter? Once you started building again and building a large portfolio again. Does that question make sense? Did I put that in the right context? Okay.
I understand the question. I'm not sure there is much of a difference. The basic components that we adhered to turn properties around in the 60s, good, solid, I believe in giving a good, well-maintained, good, clean apartment for a reasonable price, and for which I expect my rent and I expect it on time. Mm-hmm. And we adhered to that. and we'll do our part first so that you'll do your part second. So first job we have is to give them a good, clean, well-maintained apartment for a reasonable price. But I want my rent and I want it on time, or I'll get someone else to live there. Mm-hmm. So I don't think those principles have changed over the years. Certainly with the advent of tenant landlord laws in the 70s, many landlords who weren't practicing good management, they had to make major changes. But I was I was president of the Ohio Apartment Association when we changed the tenant landlord law in Ohio. And there were a lot of people who didn't want the tenant landlord law, because they weren't good operators. And too bad. The industry got better because of it. Mm-hmm. We were forced we forced bad managers to become good managers or better managers by setting principles that they should have had to begin with. So as a company, I don't think we're doing anything different. We still adhere to that same theory.
Mm-hmm. As you grew your company, I guess post divesting of those HUD assets, as you kind of went into, I guess, what we could call your second phase, leading up to where you're at today, but back in those earlier years, what were some, if you can recall, like some of the bigger barriers or struggles that you faced? What were they, and how did you overcome them? Any growing business, no matter where you come from, what experience you have, faces struggles, especially in the first couple of years. Do you recall any of those big struggles and what they were and how you overcame those?
The struggles, I would say, are basically twofold. Mm-hmm. Financial struggles, as markets do better and worse. As you reach recessions and it's hard to rent, those obviously you face problems. One of the biggest problems we had a builder who back in the 70s his picture was in Time magazine as the savior of middle-class apartments. He built his apartments out of what he said was brick, but it was actually dyed concrete block, and made him into brick form.
Oh my gosh.
And we built an apartment like this. And of course it had no insulation, and it's in Ohio, bad winters. And we had some bad winters. So the bank foreclosed on it. The partners who were left went and convinced the bank to let them buy the property. And then they came to me. And I said, fine, we'll take over the management, but we want X percentage of the partnership. When we took a look the first several months in the winter, people were getting $250 a month electric bills in the mid-70s. And the rent wasn't anywhere near that back then. And in the wintertime, the summertime, they were getting like $20 bills because they were living in a cave. So, well, what are we going to, and we didn't have enough money to fix it. So we ended up coming up with the word, the name of the property was Timbers West. We came up with the word TWRP, Timbers West Utility Relief Program, and went to the electric company and I said, how much is a budget plan for these units? Well, it's $80 a month year round. I said, great. Put us all these units on the budget plan. And therefore, when a tenant would rent, we would just give them the $80 a month Timbers West Utility Relief budget. And we filled the place up. We still own that property today. We still own it.
Why would the electric company agree to that when probably the average was much higher than that $80 a month? Or was it right in that $80 realm?
Because it was a cave. Because it was a cave in the spring and summer, the bill was so low that was the average. And it just took someone to go figure out that average worked and buffer the resident from that. Because if you tell a resident and they move in the summer and then they get a bill for $25, they think this is great. And then in the wintertime, when they get a $250 bill, they pack up the rental car and the rental truck and they move. So we had to find some way. So those are some of the fights you have along the way.
Yeah. What would you say some of your first initial, like the most important hires that you guys made as you started scaling your company? Like what were just that critical one or two people that you brought onto your team? Who were they and what were their position?
Um, in 1987, I brought a young accountant, CPA, into our organization, and Scott Bradley. Scott's still with us today, and he's the CFO of the company, and he's brilliant. And the second person I brought into the company was a woman named Rhonda Grody, now Gallahue, and she ran our property management. Since we were in 7 states, we were pretty spread out. So she organized and controlled that. And she is still with us today. So longevity, you earlier alluded to that in the website about consistency of people, our customers, our residents. They're used to seeing the same people. And so are our staff in here in the corporate office are used to seeing the same people. We've got a maintenance man who's been with us 44 years.
Wow.
You don't see that today. One of our maintenance supervisors at this property that you're looking at has been with me 24 years. So consistency is important.
Yeah, that speaks volumes for your company. So I appreciate you sharing that. And one of the other things I pulled from your site is that you've taken out some, as you mentioned, you've taken out some large rehab projects, right? Completely boarded up and vacant. I mean, that's about as big as they get. And you've won an award. I believe it was up in Ohio. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2 different years in a row, you won or not in a row, but 2 different years, you won the Rehab of the Year award. For best rehabilitation to a property. And so you guys know what you're doing. You've obviously done it many times over again. So the question is, managing large rehab projects, how do you make the determination of how many improvements and what improvements to make as to not over improve that unit?
This is why, Kevin, I don't have hair. This is exactly why I don't have hair. Listen, every time you open up a wall, you got no idea that what you find that you didn't expect, right? And so there is never a good find. There's always a bad find. And so it takes a lot of managing the problem. So you find a problem that needs fixed. There's a multitude of ways of fixing it. And you have to find the best way to do it. It is the biggest risk. I build new apartment communities. I know what it's going to cost me to build them within a certain range. You do a rehab, it's what kills most rehabbers. It just, oh my God, what I didn't expect to have happen. Yeah, it's hard. It really is.
So is it better, in your opinion, being that you've done all the above, is it better to build new or do you still buy existing product?
We still buy existing product.
Okay.
But it's so much easier to build new. Building new is simple. Now that's easy. Once you convince yourself of what the market will bear and what your pricing is. Of course, most of the guys who are building today, including us, will tell you that this property that we're sitting in here today that we just finished in January, it's 306 units, 25% away through the job, the framer came to us and said they want another 30 cents a board foot or they're going to walk off the job. Well, you got a construction lender, you got to make certain progress. You just can't sit and do nothing. So And it's happened all over. It happens in our industry, all up Tampa. Clearwater is a developer in Clearwater who got the same treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So, we said, no, goodbye. We went out and hired another framer and paid him 30 cents a board foot more. But he didn't try to rob us.
Right.
So,
that's a very, very important lesson right there.
It's treacherous. Listen, I'm telling you, that's why I got no hair. Treacherous. There's just always that that you didn't expect.
Speaking to lifestyle communities, there's been a very much an evolution over the last, call it 3-4 decades. I guess since you could tie the label of lifestyle community, I think you said maybe in the 70s or 80s, that's when they kind of originated. That's when they started getting that title associated with them, when they've had pools or tennis courts, what have you. Obviously, lifestyle communities today share some of the same amenities, but over the last decade, there's been a big shift in the types of amenities that renters are expecting, especially in probably newer build properties. Things such as trash valet, dog park, I don't know, barbecue area, what have you. What are some of the more sought out after, not just sought out amenities, but the ones that get you the biggest bang for your buck? What have you found those to be?
Well, I agree with you that dog parks and barbecue pits and those things are part of the amenity package. They're the low-lying fruit. They're very inexpensive to do and don't cost us much money. Mm-hmm. But people, and I hate to say this, buy the gingerbread. So you need to have a sparkling pool with all kinds of features around the pool. You need to have a beautiful community building with fireplaces and TV rooms, places to gather. If you don't have those, those are eye candy. Do they use them? No, but they think they will. I've had apartments that had racquetball courts, and the people walk in and go, "Oh, look at this, an indoor racquetball court." I'm the only one that ever used it. That was 400 apartments. I could get on it anytime I wanted. They never used it. So, but you got to have it. It's a necessary but not a sufficient condition for success.
Interesting. Are there any major shifts that, maybe amidst any developments that are either currently in the planning stage right now, or maybe were getting completed, here over the last 8 months during COVID? Are there any shifts or changes that you have made to the layout or to the common areas? Is there any piece of the puzzle as it relates to, new developments, again, directly related to this COVID crisis and, I guess some of the changes that we've had to adapt to as human beings?
Kevin, most of the new construction that you see going up today
was planned years ago.
Yeah, planned years ago.
Sure.
And financed years ago, and building permits issued before February. Loans, construction loans, permanent loans. We closed a loan in January. Not even a hint of this virus. And so I think going forward, however, it is going to have an effect upon design of new properties in terms of entry and access to units. For example, I think outside access to a unit is going to be like a townhome or like a small villa will be very important. No hallways, no elevators, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But the properties that are having the most action are the ones in the millennials in the inner cities, in their marketing, near stores and restaurants, and those are multi-story, multi-unit buildings. So I don't know that there will be any changes other than some people prefer more open space.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think a lot depends on, what comes about over these next probably 6 months, with the vaccine. And, I've found us human beings, we have a we have a very short memory. I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine this past weekend about 9/11, and he lived in New York at that time. He lived, a few blocks away from from where the planes hit, and the general consensus was that never again will anyone ever work in a high-rise skyscraper building. The people that left New York are not going to come back. I mean, like New York literally will not recover from this. And a year later, barely a year later, maybe a year and a half later, everything was back to normal. He was back to, within 6 months, they were back to work in a high-rise skyscraper, at his company, and life was back to normal. Folks surely didn't forget about 9/11, but they forgot about how they, the risk they felt about that event that occurred, right? And so I think we have selective amnesia, when there's something that we really enjoyed and we miss it dearly, and we ultimately get comfortable and go back to it. And so I hope that happens. That's my wish, that ultimately does happen with this COVID crisis, that a vaccine comes out and it it's given those that need it, the elderly folks, those that have compromised immune systems, the ones that are at the highest risk, you have some additional protections there, and that it allows the world to get into a much more comfortable mindset, and again, we move on with our lives, and it's another risk that's out there, but we learn to adapt to it, and we move on. So that's my hopes. I guess time will tell.
Yes, we're very resilient, and I think we all have a desire to come back to normal, and whatever our memory is of normal.
Exactly. Well, switching gears, thinking back into time over the many decades of success that you've had through all, the goods, the bads, the ups and downs, all the different cycles. If you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, back when Larry was first getting started, first started buying apartments, started doing property management, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give Larry way back then?
Go to law school.
Why is that?
The amount of money I've spent with lawyers over the years and real estate transactions, I could have saved a fortune.
I love it.
Kevin, it's an interesting point. And I would say to you that way back when, I recognized, right out of college, I recognized that you can never be wealthy making a salary. The government was always going to take their share. Cost of living and inflation was always going to limit you. If not, your wife was always going to spend whatever you didn't. So, and that would grow exponentially over the years. And so I decided that I wanted to be in a business where I could create wealth. And I don't mean wealth by making income. I mean wealth by having asset growth. And so I wouldn't do anything different, because that's exactly what has happened, is acquiring assets, watching them grow, that's created tremendous wealth. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's been a path that was the right one to follow, whether it was in this real estate market or office buildings or shopping centers or mobile home parks. Having assets gain value and grow is where you create wealth. Mm-hmm. You just don't do it from taking a salary.
No, that's great advice. I love it. I agree with every bit of it. Now, Larry, I'd like to enter what we call the lightning round. This is where we get a little bit more personal, get to understand, I guess a little deeper of who Larry is and just what's really important to you. And so the first question I have for you is your biggest fear. What is it?
My biggest fear is that I don't accomplish all that I want to accomplish.
Okay. How about one biggest regret?
That I haven't accomplished all that I wanted to accomplish.
I love it. Most influential book that you've read?
I think the most influential book I read is The Martian.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, it's a great book, great movie about how they overcome, it's fiction, but how he overcomes adversity to survive.
Okay. How about outside the daily work grind? What do you do to decompress?
I run 75 miles a week.
Wow.
No, I mean, sorry. I wish it was a week. I've been running for 40 years, so I run.
Got it. Any, I'm sure marathons, any ultra distant races or anything like that? Or what's your...
No, but when I moved to Florida, I thought, I moved here when I was 50. I thought, boy, I'm going to win a lot of races. All these old people here in Florida. Are you kidding? I haven't come even close. There's a lot of old runners down here that are very good.
What's your distance of choice when you do a race?
10K.
Okay, perfect. How about the one thing that you can't live without?
Cigars.
Ooh, I like it. How about, one day you wake up, last question, one day you wake up tomorrow, let's call it tomorrow. And you just decide that, you know what, kind of over this apartment thing, I'm over this development thing. Where does Larry pivot your time and energy and resources to? Where do you spend the rest of your focus?
I think there's two places. One is with family, and enjoying watching them grow. And I think the other is teaching.
In what capacity? The teaching?
Teaching in college, finance, helping kids to understand cap rates, investment, those kinds of things, so they can make smart choices for themselves.
Yeah, I love it. Have you done any of that, or is that just where you'd like to spend some free time?
I did for a while at one of the law schools in Ohio where I lived. I was a guest professor, and I would discuss interest rates of return, values, how to compute what I call the ERV equation, and so I enjoyed it. And I think that's kind of lost on a lot of the young investors today, is to understand the relationship between those three things.
Agreed.
So I would like to teach.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Larry, it's been a lot of fun having you here. I really appreciate you coming on the show here. And, for the folks that are listening and you want to learn more about Larry and their group, their team, as I'd mentioned, lots of information on their website. It gives you a lot of the history of the founding and, kind of their philosophy and their principles. Just again, lots of good information there that you can absorb. You can go to barringtonusa.com. Again, that's barringtonusa.com. And I'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well. And Larry, that's all I have, my friend. I really appreciate you joining us here today.
Kevin, thank you. I've enjoyed it as well. Anytime you want to do it, I'm always ready.
All righty. Well, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. You take care.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com, and we'll see you next Monday morning.